From the moment I walked into that family dinner, I could feel the judgment in the room. My cousins were talking about promotions, law school, and corporate bonuses. My aunt was bragging about her daughter's engagement to a finance executive. Everyone looked polished, successful, important. And then my uncle turned to me. "So, Emily, are you still working at that shipping warehouse?" The table went quiet. I nodded. "Yeah, I am." Someone gave a small laugh. Not loud enough to be called rude, but loud enough to be humiliating. "You always had so much potential," my aunt added gently. "I just thought you'd do more." Do more. I smiled politely, but inside I felt small. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just working there. I had started at the warehouse 2 years earlier when I couldn't land a corporate job after graduation. At first I was embarrassed. I avoided posting about it online. I avoided family gatherings. But once I was there, I started paying attention. I saw how shipments were delayed because of outdated systems. I saw small businesses struggling because big logistics companies charged them fees they couldn't afford. I saw inefficiencies everywhere. And instead of complaining, I started learning. I asked drivers questions. I studied routing software. I stayed late to understand inventory systems. At night, I researched supply chain management and startup strategies. Slowly, an idea started forming. What if I built a logistics company that focused on small businesses? Fair pricing, smarter routes, faster response. Sounded impossible. But impossible ideas often start in invisible places. At that dinner, while they were questioning my small job, my LLC paperwork had already been filed. I just hadn't told anyone. Because I wasn't ready for their doubt. The first 6 months of building my company were brutal. I worked 10-hour shifts at the warehouse and then came home to build my startup until 2 a.m. My savings were shrinking. My energy was fading. There were nights I cried quietly in my apartment, wondering if my family was right. Maybe I should have chased prestige instead of purpose. Maybe I should have chosen something that sounded impressive at dinner parties. But every time I stepped back into that warehouse, I felt something different. I didn't feel small. I felt strategic. Within a year, I signed my first small contract. A local skincare brand that needed reliable shipping. I handled everything myself at first. Calls, coordination, invoices. Then came a second client. Then a third. Revenue was slow, but steady. I still didn't tell my family. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted certainty. The turning point came unexpectedly. My cousin's fiancé, the finance executive everyone admired, was facing major shipping delays for his company. Costs were rising. Clients were frustrated. At the next family gathering, he mentioned it casually. I listened quietly. And then I said, "I might be able to help." He looked confused. "How?" "I run a logistics brokerage," I said calmly. The room froze. "You, what?" my aunt asked. I explained my company model, my client base, and the improvements we had achieved. Skepticism filled their faces, but desperation made them listen. Within weeks, we signed a short-term contract. My team optimized their distribution routes and cut costs by 18% in the first quarter. 18%. At the next dinner, the tone had changed. No one laughed. No one asked if I was still working there. Instead, my uncle said, "We didn't realize you were building something like this." That sentence meant more than applause. It meant they finally saw me. But here's what I learned. People judge what they can understand. If your work doesn't look glamorous, they assume it isn't valuable. They didn't see the exhaustion. They didn't see the rejection emails. They didn't see the 2 a.m. breakdowns. They only saw the warehouse uniform. Today, my company operates across multiple states. I employ women who were once overlooked the same way I was. I mentor young graduates who feel embarrassed about starting small. And every time someone says, "It's just a job," I remember that dinner. Because sometimes the job people laugh at is the foundation of the empire they'll one day admire. Success doesn't always arrive dressed in prestige. Sometimes it shows up in steel-toe boots and quiet determination. And sometimes the girl they underestimated becomes the one they call for hell.